Here's how a 14-year-old built this game in less than 2 hours with AI, and I'm going to show you how it was done step by step. So let's start with a quick demo. If you have played the game GeoGuessr before, this might be really familiar to you. So you see a photo and you can scroll around and then you can guess where in the world this was. So I'm probably going to guess it's somewhere in California. And then you click submit guess and it's going to tell you how far away this actually is. So in this case, the photo is in New Zealand, so I was very far off, right? And then you keep playing. So the 14-year-old, he loved this game and he wanted to recreate it. So let's talk through all the tools that he used and the lessons he learned in this process. The first thing I wanted to show him was the power of prompting. So I asked him to go to Lovable and write a really short prompt. So this says, build me a website just like GeoGuessr, which is this original game. And this is what Lovable came up with. So you can see it's very good as a landing page. It understands what GeoGuessr is, but when you try to play with it, it works okay. It's not exactly what he wanted, right? Because these are famous places. He also doesn't really want a landing page for now. He just wants to play the game. So from here, he really understood that if you give AI a very short prompt, chances are you're not going to get something very good. So this is when I introduced him the concept of a PRD, which stands for Product Requirement Document. And this is the template that I wrote for AI-driven features, especially for this kid. So we wanted to highlight things like what is the problem he's trying to solve? What are some goals that he wants to achieve? What is out of scope? What does the user go through from an end-to-end perspective, and then other things that are not super important for the initial prototype. So with this, what we did was we went to ChatGPT because I wanted him to talk to ChatGPT to get this PRD written. So what we did here was we attached this PRD template, and then I wanted him to just talk and blabber through everything that he wants ChatGPT to know. This is when we downloaded this thing called Wispt Flow, which is a voice to text AI tool that just turns speech into writing. So he basically would just press a button in ChatGPT, and I can show you now, and it's going to just record what I'm saying, and it's going to put it into the chat, right? So I don't want him to worry too much about grammar and writing, and I just want him to talk to ChatGPT. Back to ChatGPT, and you can see that ChatGPT asked him a lot of really good questions that he didn't think through. So, for example, when we first started, he didn't really think about should the player be able to rotate 360, move around the street, or explore. What's the vision? Can there be a timer? Should players be guessing anywhere on a Google Maps, searching for a city, searching by country? So all these are pretty new. And what he did was he went back and forth with ChatGPT and he answered some of the questions. For questions that he didn't care about, he just told ChatGPT, let's deprioritize this for now. In this process, he learned that he probably needs to use an API, and he didn't know what an API is. So the way we explain it is, imagine you're in a restaurant and you want to get your food. The waiter is your API because you can't go to the kitchen to get the food yourself. So you need the waiter to get the food for you from the kitchen. So that's exactly what an API does. So if you want to use photos from Google Maps, you need to go through a Google Maps API, and showed him how to set up the Google Maps API. So we got two APIs, the Street View API for the photos, and then the standard JavaScript API for the maps to guess. And we learn a little bit more about the security of APIs and how to set up your own API and manage costs, etc. So with all of this, ChatGPT generated him a PRD. So here's what it looks like. It has an overview of what we are doing. We're focusing on the desktop app. What is the problem statement? What are the goals? What is the user flow, etc. And he read through this and he made some direct edits. And this is when he's like, okay, I think this is somewhat close to the plan that I actually want. And this is when we went to Codex. So Codex is a tool that's also built by OpenAI that actually allows you to AI vibe code and build things. And I introduced him to this idea of plan mode here, which is imagining Codex is your engineer and you want them to create a plan before they actually start building. So what you would do is you can put in your PRD and it's going to create this plan that looks again like a PRD, but it's actually from an engineering perspective. And I asked him to read through this plan. He wouldn't understand certain things like Vite React, what that is, but he would understand things like, oh, what does the gameplay look like? What does the implementation look like? He's going to go back and forth with Codex and ask it to change anything that he actually didn't want, right? So Codex would build this first version. So after that is done, it's time to iterate. So basically Codex built out something and we open it on the browser. And this is when I introduced him to the other tool here, which is Annotate. So what this is good for is to make changes. So for example, if I want to change this thing here and I just want to say, instead of reset, call it R, it's better to do it here than through the chat directly because Codex wouldn't have to guess what you're referring to, and it's going to make the change directly to this button. So we did that a couple of times, and it got it to a good place that he's happy with. And then we connected all this code to his GitHub account, and then we published it on Vercel. And this is the final page on Vercel published it you can play with. And he was really happy with it. He played with it for a couple hours after that, so he had a really good time.